is what people are on LinkedIn.
That's AM. We're live. All right. You got Nick Fochio right now, Fomat Research. We're gonna talk. He's on one of my panels. We never met prior to that Zoom, which is crazy because you're like a SoCal guy, and so am I. Until I moved a little more further east, Yuma, Arizona. But Nick's on one of the SOS panels. Look, guys, we only have 2 days left. That's it. Sorry if you miss out. SOSSaveOurSites.com. Nick's going to be on a panel, amazing panel about onboarding new staff and everything that goes into that. But Nick's got an incredible career and an aspirational story about how he became a site owner and running sites and all kinds of stuff. He joined a site network. I mean, where do you want to start? What's been going on with you, Nick?
So, well, first off, Dan, thank you for having me here, and it's an honor being knowing your trajectory. You know what you and Brad and a few others have done in the space and bringing kind of breaking a little bit of the status quo. So I really appreciate that, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you.
I really do. And I'd maybe start from your audience, large in part, is sites trying to help sites. And I think it's people that are, if I can give any feedback and learn also from others, but if I can give some feedback from my perspective, I would love to maybe do that.
Yeah. So what have you learned? Well, when you got started out, how did you get started in this? Because everybody kind of stumbles into it. And then how do you go from that to being president of FOMAT in like 12 short years?
So I was one of the, maybe I'm the outsider here. I actually didn't stumble into research that much. When I was in high school, my father's a researcher. He does IITs as well as clinical research now since I was in high school. And I worked in his lab during summer breaks. So, instead of going the last year, I decided to, veer off on my own. And I went to become a waiter at a restaurant for a little bit and realized I was more interested in the research, if you will. Japanese restaurant.
Well, you learned patient centricity.
Absolutely. So now we do Japanese bridging trials, right? So I went to, then I did biochem. I've done research, all types of research, bench, wet lab, you name it, really. I think most notably I worked with Dr. Gerald Petrovsky, to be exact. And he was nominated to be a Nobel laureate at some point in his career. And that was probably from a scientific perspective, one of my highlights. We were publishing, maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit here, but maybe a paper a week. It was an insane experience. And that then I graduated and I went to Medtronic and then kind of got into the management side and then research. And I worked for a site network called DRS, and which my father was a shareholder for. One of the 8 shareholders, but a shareholder. And he, I kind of early on in my career wanted to make my own path, if you will, as opposed to follow my father's. I was pre-med and I wanted to do that too, but kind of on my own path. But his partner, one of the other shareholders, actually reached out and said, "Hey, this is us wanting you to join." And I was I kind of adamant about that. And later in life, I realized that if I could give one advice for those that are wanting to kind of, and I hear this topic very often, people wanting to veer from what their father or don't want to be in their kind of, I kind of regret. I don't know if regret, because at the time that's what I wanted to do. But lessons learned, I should have maybe earlier realized that there's a lot of beauty to working with your father and your family, and and taking advantage of his know-how. Like it took me 12 years to learn something that he could have easily, if I just would have immersed myself into
Wow.
that earlier, right? So
That's big. We have common. That's a similarity. My dad was also a PI when I got started, but he got thrown into it by accident and dragged me into it also because med school. He was like, "Yeah, just intern here for a few months and then apply to med school." He didn't
yeah,
really like being a PI. And then when I took over the business, he told me, "Hey, you got like a year. Make sure you find my replacement," because he was done. He went to go work for the state of California in the psych prison, the
oh, oh wow,
Patton State Hospital. So we got some similarities, man. I can't
yeah,
believe. Now we're both SoCal people. You grew up, born and raised there, or
yeah, and Ventura County to be exact.
okay? Me was Orange County.
Nice. And I believe um, you've been all around though California, really.
We had a site in yeah, LA, Orange County, never in San Diego. San Bernardino, we still have it. And then we tried Bakersfield. And
Nice.
Bakersfield was like the same hypothesis as Yuma, Arizona,
Okay.
but it failed. It failed because Dignity Health came in after we did all the work. Dignity Health came in and said, "Oh, we acquired your PI's practice, so he
Yeah.
works for us. Thanks for your help in setting this up. We'll
Thank
take
you
it
very
from
much.
here." They had the nerve, Nick, to email me a month later after they kicked me out and said, "Hey, can you help negotiate this contract for?" Heck no.
Right. Tell. Yeah. What are
Yeah, so that's how I that was my experience. But that what you said about working, with your dad, like those were my formative years as a side owner. But he always told me, he said, "This is a tough business to run. I don't know if you're gonna be able to do it, but at least you're gonna try."
right.
And now he sees that it worked out, but he stopped being a PI a long time ago. And he's like surprised. He's like, "Wow, you made a career out of
You
this."
did it. Yeah.
He's shocked even to this day that it worked.
So if I, yeah, I mean, I would, I'd echo to that. I think that's a very parallels with me and my father. He, um, he's a physician. He's a scientist. That's his world. And he too was like, this the business side here, take it and go with it because that was not his strength. At the time, I was kind of battling the idea of like I wanted to do my own career and I didn't want to have a leg up because of my father and rather because of my own merits, if you will.
Yeah.
Um, but then later on, I kind of realized um, that it wasn't necessarily. I was kind of seeing the picture in the wrong way. Um, but either way, I mean, I think the one thing that not the one thing, but the there's one of many, but one thing that comes to mind today, right now, is for sites that I've learned in the last 12 years as in leadership of FOMAT and Hypercore and in other situations in boards and that I'm in is trying to measure everything. And sometimes there's your paralysis by analysis, so it's like maybe too much sometimes. But I rather have too much data than too little data. And I
Hmm.
think very early on in my career, I was managing by the gut, and it was just I won another trial, and it's like run and do it. And now knowing how many trials my team can support numerically. I know that. I know for a fact how many down to like hours, down to I have it's like a dashboard of data. And what happens is if we win more trials than we have resources to do it, I hire for it, and that trial won't start until 6 months from today. Let's say I have 6 months to bring somebody onboard them, train them, and you start seeing patterns in your data to that extent. So I think that's from every department, from marketing. How much does it cost to acquire a new lead, or for a new patient recruited, from if you patient recruitment from a regulatory perspective? How long is it take you with with Advara versus WCG,
Mm.
from a contract and budget perspective, knowing, with Pfizer, usually this is the rate that they pay versus, an Amgen versus Avi, and having all that data really helps you negotiate better, say no to stuff. Before, I would say yes to everything, and later in the year, I'm like, are we, why are we in the red? Uh, and it's you realize you're like, well, it's because you're accepting studies that you shouldn't be accepting,
Yeah.
and I
And
think that,
why are we wasting time on this stuff?
yeah,
And
yeah,
with FOMAT, so can you talk a little bit about FOMAT, because you've been at the helm for almost 12 years, right? You
right,
started as a managing director and became the CEO. So like from day one when you became managing director, and then you guys became a part of Hypercore, which we've had Dr. Kingsley on the show before. I've
nice.
met him in the past. He's a really cool dude. Everyone should get to know him. Can you kind of walk me through like how you got FOMAT to the point where it is now, and maybe a little bit more about what you guys do, like therapeutic areas and things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're the company itself has been, we just had our 10-year anniversary in May, the
Oh, okay.
company. I myself have an additional year, about a year and some change, maybe I think it's about a year and 4 months to be exact, of about a year and a half prior setting FOMAT up. So if you want to count that, that's about entering into almost to the 12th year.
Wow.
And yeah, so how did that? Sorry, hi Joey.
Joey Nguyen says, I had the pleasure to work with FOMAT for some time. His avatar is him riding a horse on the beach.
I love
Amazing.
it. I love it. And this is my first time experiencing any live. I was telling Brad, I was telling Dan about this moments before going on. I've never. This is my first time, and I'm really excited about it. Thank you, Joey. And I didn't see it pops up on my screen over here, and uh,
Yeah, it's pretty fun.
really
If you
cool.
guys have questions, by the way, for Nick or myself, just throw them on there. Let us know, like site owner, coordinator. We're going to be talking at SOS about a lot of this stuff. But how did you get basically FOMAT?
Yeah.
Well, how did you get it to even be part of Hypercore? Because that's kind of a prestigious group. Like, you have to be invited to that thing. You can't just like
So
join, right?
right. Um,
Like, what did you do? Had to do good things to get at that level.
well, I appreciate that. I do. We early on, Mark Lacey
Shout out to
invited.
Mark Lacey. I met him. Rode around in my car with me back in the day.
Yeah, great guy. Great, great, great. Shout out to Mark for sure. He put up a couple of people. It was, I think, 8 of us or 10 of us at the time, and put us in a room and said, "Hey, I want to build this." And you guys are the people that he identified. I think he was maybe, you know, maybe drunk when he chose me. But so he, but no,
Like,
I mean,
seriously?
he saw something, right?
He
No,
saw something. He saw like fresh blood, young blood.
yeah,
You're
something like
crazy
that.
enough to like try new things.
Yeah.
It's probably what he saw.
And so we did it. It was about 10 of us. We were in a. We all flew into, I think it was Miami at the time, and we built Hypercore together. Um,
Wow.
and yeah, from that it stemmed.
He
And
was
my
so
interest.
he was ahead of his time, because now everyone's trying to do this site
Yeah,
networking.
yeah,
But
he
this was,
was.
you said 2012. I met him in 2010, and he would like there was barely some talks. He was still running benchmark
Yeah,
research at that time, and he was doing it on a local level with like therapeutic specialties. One of the
yeah.
reasons he was talking to us, but yeah, he was ahead of it. He had a pretty good foresight.
Visionary for sure. He
Mm.
uh, I would argue top 5 vaccine networks in the United States.
Oh, easily. Even back
Right.
then, even in 2010.
Yeah. And HyperCore is about 5 years old. And this happened about 5 years ago now. And since then, today, to answer what we do today, we're only in California, and we're 24 locations throughout California in most therapeutic areas. And
Wow.
we're in the embedded model, so that's what we embed ourselves in community centers that are underprivileged, underserved. We don't really service more kind of affluent areas.
Right.
We are primarily in more underserved areas, either underserved from a research perspective or from a ethnic perspective, racial perspective,
Mm-hmm.
financial perspective, and yeah, so we bring research to those areas. We have the infrastructure, et
How
cetera.
does that work? Because I'm doing that here in Yuma, and
Yeah.
just signed up my 4th PI. Well,
Yeah.
unofficially, but he basically gave me his word. I actually still don't have any contract with any of the 3 PIs I have. It's just LLC operating agreements eventually. But how, like, we're also embedded in their offices. But what I found was we end up running out of space, and we end up like occupying more and more until we're basically told nicely, hey,
And
like,
get out.
get your own place at this
Yeah.
point. So that's what we do. We have like a hub, like our own place, but then we have the set, like all the sites
The
where
hub and
where
spoke.
we see clinics. Yeah, I guess it's hub and spoke model. Is that similar to what you guys do, or
Spot on. The same
okay?
thing. We have the hub and spoke. That's what we've been doing since that I would say is our. We started that 10 years ago, and over the 10 years, we've slowly been adding and adding. So our hubs, more spokes, and then more hubs, and more spokes,
Okay.
and the that's exactly what we do. And one thing I would say also to the industry, and sorry for the background, there's kids running
Oh,
around,
yeah, it's the
and
holidays, man. By the way,
yeah,
happy holidays to everyone
yeah,
watching. I know,
Merry
like, if you're
Christmas,
watching
to
this,
everybody.
you're focused, you're dedicated. Like, it's an off week. Joey says I used to work with BTC Network, Clint Edge. I
I
did the
do remember
contract.
Joey, by the way. I didn't know I
There
could
you go.
shout out Joey. I do remember, absolutely remember you.
All right. Joey's
Uh,
happy.
he's awesome. Wait,
Yes, Joey. Thank you, man. I watched your video nonstop back to back. I learned the field. I understood clinical research quicker. Thank you, Joey. I appreciate it. And we appreciate you watching, man. How how many staff do you guys have? Like, so you're all over California, like NorCal, SoCal.
so we're the furthest northern point today. We're in negotiations to take us a little further north, but it's the southernmost point of NorCal.
San Jose,
No,
Santa Cruz.
so we're in Salinas, Monterey County.
Salinas.
So we're in,
That's a good location.
we've partnered with CSVS, which they are the largest community center in the county. They
Wow.
have over 250,000 patient visits a year, and they're large, highly Hispanic, a lot of Hispanic and
Yeah.
Indian Americans, Native Americans, Mixtecos, uh, etc., and high on agriculture. They are the largest provider of health in that county,
Wow.
hard stop. So that's been great to work with them. And that's the furthest northern point.
And then South, you're in San Diego.
Southernmost point is going to be Los Angeles. It's going to be
Oh, okay. Okay.
Monrovia, to be exact.
Wow. So between there and are you in Inland Empire also? Like
We are in where's the furthest in? I'm gonna have to get back to you on this one. I don't
okay.
know what the furthest in is.
Have you gone as far as Bakersfield or
We are looking in. We're in conversations with a group right now.
I've been looking for I gave up on it, but that was my Yuma before
Yeah,
Yuma was
we're
Bakersfield.
right. We're in conversations today, and we'll see where it goes. We are in conversations also with a group in San Diego. We're
Okay.
also in but these are conversations that lead somewhere or lead to a friendship.
But like ultimately you're the one like at the top that says, yeah, we're gonna do this or no. And right
Correct.
now you have biz dev people running the community, seeing
Right.
what's like a potential opportunity.
Right. Correct. We're about 100 employees. We're under 100
Wow.
employees. We're under 100, but we're
Congrats,
creeping
man.
up. Thank you. Thank you. I have a phenomenal team that makes me look good, I suppose,
How do
except
you
for the
manage
fact,
it though? Like, is it regional, therapeutic area? Because like that's a huge geographic region.
yeah.
Like Yuma's small. It's like 30, maybe 50 square miles, if that. Like our region, everyone can basically be in the same place. But to do like what you're doing
Well,
requires like stationary teams. Like you guys stay here in Salinas, you guys, or do you have like remote traveling coordinators?
we have stationaries. So we have 24 spokes, by the way. It's not
Wow.
20. Following your model and my model are very the same, but we only have 4 hubs.
Ah, okay.
So it's 4 hubs, 24 spokes. And we're opening, and again, back to the negotiation thing, we're opening about 3 additional hubs, which of those will have more spokes. And if you can kind of play out the idea further, a lot of things can be centralized, and a lot of things need to be local, right?
Yeah.
So you centralize what you can, you put local. And another thing that, contrary to maybe popular belief, and this is something I was actually speaking to Lauren from Clinical Fast Track just not too long ago, and is there's a huge benefit from hiring locally, and not only from, I mean, the list is huge, but um, if you do you know Seneca? If you know Seneca, you should bring him on here. He's a phenomenal guy. You're gonna love that guy. But he once said, if it quacks like a duck and walks like a duck, it's probably, and he probably had some little terms better to add to it, but it's probably a duck. And in reference, he said it so much better than me. I'm not an eloquent speaker. What he was trying to say, at least what he said, and what I'm trying to say, is if you're in a research site that is going to treat Hispanics, you should have a Hispanic site. You should have, if it's a site that's going to it's targeting X community, X race, X ethnicity. It should kind of be from that community. So we do try whenever possible. Granted, it's not like it's 100% of the time, but whenever possible, hire local, train, and it makes it significantly better.
Yeah, and it makes absolutely makes sense. And some of the coordinators, even on my small team, they're connected to just about everyone in the community. So when
Right.
it comes to patient recruitment and community outreach, it's a no-brainer with some of these. Like some of the things you can centralize, because I'm curious now about the hub and spoke. One of the first things that, like, one of the most valuable real estate spaces is investigational product storage
Right.
because it's needs to be controlled, temperature controlled, like it's very specific range. And it's also a lot of room, like a lot of space is actually needed for that stuff. Do you centralize those like in the hubs and then transport them to the clinics, like to the spokes, or do you in each actual clinic have IP?
Okay. That's a
We're getting
heavy
nitty
load.
gritty because like I'm dealing with that right now.
No, that's great. I think it's study specific. You have to have SOPs for it, and we do, which I don't mind sharing, by the way, Dan.
Yeah.
Um, we try at all cost, whenever possible, to centralize IP storage as well. By the way, um, in some studies, and it's not a small percent, won't allow it. They'll require you to have it at where the patient is going to be um, administer their IP.
Right.
So in some cases, and it's not a small percent that does have it is required, but I will also say is a good percent that does allow it. So I think it kind of allows you for that real estate, because as you're saying, the truth for anybody that does this model or that wants to get into this model, the main concern you're going to have is real estate.
That's
Most of
it.
these doctor offices they're whatever space they have, they're using it.
They're
Right?
using all of
Yeah.
Nick. When I first met my internal medicine doctor, he brought his PA. She's a doctor from Peru, but she's a physician assistant here. They're the
Yeah.
co-owners of Up to Par, the biggest in Yuma, like the biggest private practice, non-hospital related clinic in Yuma. She told me on the first day, profit per square foot. Like that's the metric. You said you have data on everything. That's the only data she cared. That's the only metric she cared about.
Right.
Profit per square foot. That's it. Like their square footage is limited. They want to make sure they can maximize everything. They saw research as a way to do that. Until it's not, like until they got another provider and they say, hey, you got to move upstairs because that
Yeah.
provider is giving me
More.
more profit per
Right.
square foot.
Yeah. So that becomes probably the main issue across the board. And you have to prove that you do bring a higher ROI per square foot. But if you're not, then your space kind of shrinks.
Yeah.
So you can't, for a lot of these trials, it's boxes upon boxes and IPs. And, right.
These
so
guys
then
need to see some of that just to believe it. Seeing is
right,
believing.
right. So what I suggest for that is that you can send a lot of that you can centralize a lot of that.
But do you have logs for everything? Like if it's a lab kit and you're storing it centrally. Do you have a transportation log? I know for IP you're supposed to, but like for lab kits, for example, I mean, you could argue both ways. Like we should have SOP or we shouldn't. And do you make those decisions like at a local level or like company wide?
So we that's a great question. I think we're trying to. This is FOMAT speaking. I can't speak for everybody that has this model, but for FOMAT, we attempt to have it across all our sites, everything, and to standardize as much as possible. So it's not local stuff will happen when it's a particular trial that only is happening in a particular site, but it's very study specific rather than site specific. And we may one off for a particular study, but for kids, that is something that can be and should be stored at a central perspective. You have more space, more control. And here's a shout out to another shout. I don't know if I'm allowed to do shout outs and
yeah, anything you want, man.
But Slope for those that are not on
Slope.
it.
Russ Felix.
Yeah. So we're getting more and more on it. We're getting more and more on it. We're not, Matt is a good friend and he's been there, so he's been helping me through this process.
Do you recommend like Slope? Because I know about it, but I never messed around with it.
I think if you're, especially where you're at, Dan, where you're now at 3 entering 4, you're a big deal, right? I would start considering Slope because you're going to have, if you're averaging 5 to 10 trials per location, right? So that's anywhere from 15 to 30 trials. Yeah. Each one of, let's say on average, you have 20 trials. And each one of those trials sends you at bare minimum 10 boxes, right? That's 200 boxes you have to keep track of them, then retire, expiring and stuff. Slope does help you in that. They're working on some kinks, and this is hopefully Slope and Matt hear this, and but all in all, from what we've been shopping around, they're a great product to have.
I'll never forget. I went to an AMC, Academic Medical Center, and their real estate was so limited. They showed me the ceiling panels where they put lab kits in the ceiling panels.
So we had, again, this is years ago, but we had one room that was stacked, but just to the ceiling, all the way touched the ceiling. It literally touched the ceiling. And then we have, I don't know, I'm sure this happens all throughout the U.S., but in California, our firefighters come once a year and do an audit. firefighter walked in the room, looked at us, and said, "That has got to go by 72 hours because you have to bring it below this because it gave us all the logic." But yeah, I mean it
So where'd you put it? Like where would you put that?
we ended up having to rent an additional space.
Yikes.
Yeah, so more, and that in itself was a headache because now we moved it to it was next door. It's actually not next door, it's in front of us. So it's like across the street, but it's like it's in the same, you cross the street, it's right in front of us. And so we rented it. Now we're paying more. We're not going to get paid for that. The sponsors are not going to pay for that. But here's the issue was that the address now became from 105 to 107. So for the storage of kits, so from a regulatory perspective, our regulatory team said, "Hey, that needs to get approved." And I was like, "All right, that makes sense." But it's like for me, it's like in my brain, it's like this is still the same kind of thing, right? Yeah. They're like, no, you had to add 107. I'm like, all right, let's do it. It took us 2 months for us to get approval of all of the studies. So but we had 72 hours from a firefighter perspective to do something. So it was for 2 months, it was a very difficult 2 months, us dealing with those kids.
And that's just like one of 1,000 things the site owner has to deal with.
Yeah.
What is like today, like a typical day for you, Nick? Like what do you actually like? What does a typical day look like for you?
I get to enjoy conversations with people like yourself.
But are you like in the clinic? Like are you in the clinic or do you work from home?
I get to work from home either 1 to 2 days a week. Right now it's Christmas break, right? So I'm working this week. I'll probably work. I went into the office yesterday. I'll go into the office tomorrow. Usually Wednesdays is my work from home day.
Okay.
And but I'd say in large, I'm meeting with the investigators. I'm meeting with the pharmaceuticals. It's a lot of meetings. I would say I'm stuck in a lot of meetings, and I think you're also a firefighter. You're putting out fires. The fires never disappear. They just change in style, right? Before it was like getting new studies or whatever it was, right? And then now the fires are a little bit different.
Yeah.
So I think
energy just transforms, right? It doesn't go away. So like putting out fires means, okay, if you put them out properly, you're creating something better for the business, like a more of an output. But if you're not, you're just putting them somewhere else where something else is going to burn eventually. One of the things I noticed. But 100 people, that's
and I think
that's quite a lot.
A big focus right now for me is bringing AI into this kind of into this space a little bit.
I got something.
I'd say that's probably one of my bigger focuses this quarter. And
we got to talk off camera about that. I got something up my sleeve with that. It's not me. It's a group that I'm an advisor on. We're going to use it for our EMRs.
Nice.
It's basically AI to pull your, so you put the protocol in your EMR or in this AI, and then it will within seconds tell you everyone that's probably qualified for the study. Instead of just manually looking every day and oh, the provider referred this person, let's look, like how it's currently going. The goal is by next year, this thing will let us know these 136 people most likely qualify. Check them out.
That's cool. There's a couple of players that are competing for that right now. So, I'm more thinking. I love to talk offline, by the way, and help however I can get involved. I consider me a resource as well. I love to be involved. But what I'm trying to see is, we brought on somebody that's in our team today that is our AI implementer.
Seriously,
if you will.
Wow.
And the intent is, let's grab every department of a company and that exists in our company or doesn't exist, right? It doesn't necessarily have to currently exist. But what AI tools are there out there already that exist, and that could augment our staff to have a better output, if you will, right? So we're doing that. We've already done that with our marketing patient recruitment team. We've already implemented a couple, and now we're going on to the next department and next and next. And
Wow,
I think that's maybe one of the things that's really exciting right now.
that's
Um,
commendable.
and I think that also we're one of the AIs, by the way, is a patient feedback loop, which I think is very valuable. Is gaining access to patient to give you feedback, and that's not difficult, right? That softwares like that are like they're like $10 a month, and now you have. I saw somebody recently say that they were doing 10, 20 patients a day of visits, right? So you now have 20 patients that you're not touching, right? But what if you gave those 20 patients an ability to give you feedback that gives them a voice? If you want to see it from a kind of a shallow perspective, from a financial perspective, there's a benefit there. If you want to see it from an altruistic perspective, there's benefit there. If you want to see it from a patient centricity, there's a benefit there. Uh, there's a benefit from like all kinds of ways, and so I'd strongly urge it. It's $10,
Wow.
and all you do, and you're getting data that will then provide to your marketing, your staff, your clinical research coordinator, everybody. It's like, oh, you guys are doing a phenomenal job. Oh, you guys we're taking too long. What's going on?
Yeah.
Oh, it's because patients are, we forget to tell them this. Oh, then that's a text. Can we automate that text before the day before? Uh,
Hmm.
can we do that? Most of the things are quick fixes. Um,
True. You just got to know what you're fixing first, which is
right,
back to your initial point of measure as much as you can.
right, right.
Yeah, I know
Well,
that's interesting. I mean, we have a small team of not counting our investigators. We have like 8 of us, and we just turned on auto text reminders for patients today. Like literally today, we turned it on with Creo,
that's awesome.
um, and we'll see how that works. But I'm also a big fan of like automating things that used to take time. Like one of the things I'm big on now is because I've noticed it happen twice with our staff is when someone screen fails or they're pending something else that they reach out and let that patient know what's happening because it's very easy to say, okay, patient screen failed, let's screen fail in the IRT and move on. Well, someone should let the patient know, like,
Right,
what's going on. They're probably waiting for their next appointment. And we caught that a few times and we're fixing that right away because we can't have that. We gotta let the patient at least know what's happening with the study. Like when they don't qualify or when they're in the middle of like waiting to qualify. You know how sometimes it's
right,
like a month or even longer.
right,
That radio silence could mean the difference between patient not wanting to do the trial anymore.
right, right.
Like what good is it if they qualify if your lack of communication causes them to not want to do it anymore? So that to me, like stuff like that, we got to figure out how to fix. And if that could be automated, I'm all for it.
What do you think about having patients um, participate again?
Oh, I love that. I love that. I've started pairing studies for that reason. So if I have an MDD study, depression, I better have another 2 or 3 MDD studies. Why? Because 80% screen fail rate for arbitrary reasons.
Right,
So here you have a motivated individual that wants to do studies, excited about it. Now they screen fail because of some algorithm in the sky. And now you
right,
have nothing else to put them in. Well, so get similar studies, get another TA. They call it competing studies. I don't. I see them as complementary, like pairing a good wine with a cheese. Like I
right,
have
right,
this study, it makes sense for me to get this one
right,
because of this exclusion criteria, which is like 60% of them.
right.
It's not on this one. So everyone who screen fails that one is actually
Oh,
pre-screened for the other one.
right, right,
I
right, right.
love that stuff.
No, I wholeheartedly agree. By the way, there's the con that you may it may I do also I practice that same thesis that you just said, wholeheartedly, by the way. But some people will say no because now you're putting yourself up. That if you have one client and if you're doing that one client right, being the sponsor in this case, you're going to focus their attention to, if you promise 10 patients, let's say, you're going to deliver 10 patients. If you have two and you promise 10 and 10, yes, you as a site have an ability to, like, patient that doesn't go here, goes over here. It's good for your business continuity, but now you've lost focus on this one particular sponsor. And to that, I counter saying, yeah, I see your point of view, but now that I have two resources to service, I now have more money to advertise, more attention to focus more to, like, asthma in general, right?
Yep.
I'm now going to bring more because I know if I screen fail, I can put them over here,
Yeah.
and it gives me more of that business continuity, right?
And
So
I could advertise for another study and benefit your
right,
study from it based
exactly,
on the ads I'm paying for, or
right,
based on the
exactly.
ads another sponsor maybe is paying for. So
Right.
yeah, no, I don't see it that way, and I don't think sponsors do either. I think where they would want you to be careful is when they finish a study, putting them into another study. Like
And
there's
that's
usually like a 90-day thing or
right, and that's kind of the
30-day.
question I was trying to lead us to. What are your thoughts about that? About
That's a less common occurrence, and most patients would also want a break from my experiences. Like 2.5 years here, we've had two patients that have done multiple studies, so it hasn't been a lot, like completed multiple studies. And they usually want a break also, and they're okay with that 30-day or 90-day, whatever the protocol requires of a break. Um, so I that's less of a problem to me. The benefits are at the screen fails, because when you're talking about 80% screen fail rates for some of these trials, which they are, like, you mean to tell me 8 out of 10 patients that were pumped up about it joining a study, we got to tell them sorry, and that's all we have. We're waiting on another one. No, it's our duty to go find other studies that are complementary to them
right.
to get them in, because they're more likely at that point to qualify for this other study. And I think more sites need to start thinking about that and getting smarter about that kind of stuff. That's one of the things we're going to talk about at SOS. I'm not on that panel, but I know there's a panel on that. Maybe Chris is on that one.
So that's one of those topics where I think technology can help, right?
Yeah.
And going back to the point you had previously mentioned about keeping your patients in the loop of a screen failed. Also, as soon as the study ends, letting the patient know, hey, congratulations for participating the full way through. You did help. And if the sponsor allows us to provide you data, here's the data. And give me some feedback to see how we can improve. Would you like to be kept in the loop for other trials? So having that, all of what I've just mentioned, all of that is pretty automatable. Can be made automated. Could be, I don't know. Wait, that's
With like off the shelf stuff.
yeah, pretty off the shelf stuff. And now you have these patients that can now may be interested, in participating in another trial in 90 days, and they're going to be your biggest spokespeople, just
Yeah.
because they've participated. They knew what how it went, and most people, once they've gone through the first even month, they're like, oh my gosh, this is not what I thought it was. I'm not a guinea pig, right? And
All of them feel that way. All of them feel the opposite of that when you're first talking to them about a study.
right,
That's the initial, oh, I'm a guinea pig. As
yeah.
soon as they do their first visit, at least at our site, none of them feel that way. Like they all want to do other studies. They bring their family. This is why getting that first randomized patient might be the toughest thing you do, because even if you don't find another patient in your database, that patient probably knows someone that you could at least screen. It happens all the time.
I think it's 97% is where I read. This is years ago though. 97% of people that participated would participate again,
Yeah, it's
which
about
is
sounds right.
right. And if you're for every 10, for every 100 patients you enroll, 97 of those you wouldn't have to have that issue which you just identified, which is
Right.
that first patient is such a difficult patient, right?
Difficult
If you
one, and
already have
as
all
long
those patients are easily would easily get involved again, right?
and
It's
as
just they
long
don't
as
know.
they see that you're fighting for them, and I do call it fighting sometimes. Perfect example. Today we had to screen fail a patient because of the holidays. They couldn't get their eye exam done for a study, and sponsor said screen fail and rescreen, but we only allow one rescreen. So we have to tell the patient, hey, you got to come back and do everything again, but don't worry, you get paid again, and here's why. It's really not our fault, but the sponsor insists, and they roll their eyes and say, "Yeah, these sponsors are kind of dumb, but okay, we'll do it."
All right,
And other times, it's like the CRO or some vendor is trying to look for reasons to screen fail a patient, and you got to go in there and advocate on the behalf of your patient. Like, no, this is not a screen failure just because it's more convenient for you to report it as such. We can actually fight for this patient and show you that they do qualify. That takes more work. We're willing to do it, and we're gonna force you to play our game because this is a patient. I've had to personally fight for probably 3 or 4 patients this year, 2023, and they got in. All of them got in,
I think
which
that's fair.
they were quick to say screen fail, screen fail, screen fail for all of them, and I was like, nope, nope, nope. And the hard part about leveraging a site or growing a site is leveraging that intangible, which I know I could do, into like training someone else to do that, right?
Right, right,
It's not so easy as just okay, be a coordinator and complete this visit. It's like
right.
it's hard to articulate even what I'm doing, but I know what I'm doing.
So I would have to agree. I don't know if what's our number. I don't, and that's kind of coming from somebody that I would like to know. Now I'm super curious to know what is our number.
Yeah.
But I guarantee, somewhere around probably single digits, but maybe entering to double digits of patients that we fought as well. Very similar, and
See?
it's a PI saying no, like this patient qualifies, and there's a lot of subjectivity in these trials. As much as
Yes.
inclusion exclusion criteria they look objective. A lot of them are like per the PI's opinion or and are there is like some subjectivity, right?
They always say per the PI's opinion, but always ask the medical monitor. So it's really not per the PI's opinion.
Yeah,
It really boils down to some guy or gal in some ivory tower somewhere that's going to have the final say. And if you could push back, and I haven't had to fight with medical monitors, I've been fighting with vendors, just like central vendors that say, no, screen fail. Well, no, it's not a screen failure. You just don't want to go the extra mile for your
right,
patient because it's not yours. I get it, but they are my patient and I will go the extra mile.
right,
And you
right,
know
right,
what? Every single one of my coordinator, this was an aha moment for me. Let me close this door. This was an aha moment for me. My coordinators were ready to screen fail. Do as you're told. That's this CRO. They must be higher than us. They told us the screen fail. We got a screen fail. They were shocked that I'm fighting it, and then they saw that it worked, and they're like, "Oh, wait a minute! Like, how do we do that in the future?" So it's like something you got to teach, but this
it's hard.
the coordinator has to be ready. Like you have to be at a certain level to be able to use rationale, and it's not always going to work either. But yeah, I really see it as patient advocacy at some point too.
Yeah, agreed.
That's crazy
uh,
stuff, man.
it's that, and like if you are start entering into um the vendor space of the technology, I think that's a just recently, and this has happened. This I can say in double digits, maybe even no, I don't say triple, but definitely high double digits, where we've had patients. I don't know if high. Maybe I'm exaggerating. I need to give you data, Dan. I don't want to give you like
Well,
just double
double
digits.
digits, yeah,
Yeah,
double
double
digits.
digits, and where you'll have a patient comes in, and this is kind of where really kind of just bother everybody that was involved here. Um, Patient was perfect, was ready for enrollment. Call it on a Monday, and the computer, the there's a software. I'm not sure which software was at this exact moment. I think it was the IVRS. Wasn't working at that moment in time, and that was an hour of troubleshooting, a 2 hour troubleshooting. Patient's like, I got to go to work. Patient leaves, and then we say, we're so sorry. Let's reschedule. So sponsor tries to figure it out. Everybody's fine. Technology's fine. Can you come back tomorrow? Because we're still in the window. Patient comes back the next day. Maybe I'm exaggerating. Maybe they came back 2 days later, but for the sake of this conversation, they came back the next day, and same thing. They came on again. Software issue. The patient wasn't able to randomize. 2 hours later, again, the patient's like, I got to go to the office. This is day 2. Day 3, patient comes back. And finally, after like an hour and a half into it, still had to wait, by the way. It wasn't like they came in and boom. An hour and a half into it, they finally got it solved. They went off. Here's the interesting part. This patient had to take 3 days off of work, right? And was only paid 1 patient stipend because the other 2 visits. You know what I mean? So it's like,
that pisses me off, man.
And the doctor, the PI, was just livid. It's like, how are you supposed to have a patient who has, their full-time job and providing for a family, like having them release so you can get some data, but you can't even. So that stuff like that needs to be.
And this is a very common occurrence because this is basically the same story we've experienced. I don't know how many times this year, not double digits. We don't see that many patients, but high single digits this year. I remember actually Mike from Versatral was there during one of them, shadowing and watching us. This is not a rare thing. This is something that's par for the course, and I just pay them. I make it an extra screening unscheduled, pay them again.
Yeah, we worked around it, and we made the patient whole, if you will. But still, you have to go through so much. You have to elevate it to.
Yeah, there's so much. Like, that's some of the frustrating parts of doing what we do, and then trying to scale that.
Right.
And trying to keep everyone happy, patients and coordinators. That's not fun for the coordinators, by the way.
Yeah, they're the ones hearing it's the worst for them, right? Because they're the ones hearing it from the patient side. The doctor's pissed, right? The doctor is like, how are we doing this to our patient? Like, this is annoying.
The doctor thinks that the staff doesn't know what they're doing.
Right. And then you have the patients thinking the staff's taking forever.
Yeah.
The monitor is like, wait, why aren't you? And it's like the technology. Everybody's like, somehow.
The monitor's just happy they're not there dealing with the patient.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of stuff to fix, but I think there's one book that I read a couple of years ago that flips the script a little bit. And yes, we have so much to improve on still as a society, but for once, in the book is like divided into 12 chapters, and each chapter grabs like healthcare and finance and agriculture and just breaks down different sectors and where we were 30 years ago and where we are today. From like how many people just 30 years ago, within our lifetime, where, what was the mortality rate for kids? What was the mortality, and where for vaccination and you can kind of keep on going. It's just statistics, and it explains to you kind of where we were and where we are from a finance. Like, well, before average household had an income of X, and today, considering the inflation and all, but where we are today. And, we've advanced so much as a society. I think research is significantly more advanced. It's more equitable as compared to what it was 30 years ago.
Of course.
Right?
Of course.
We're still not doing research in underrepresented locations, et cetera. Yes, I totally agree. But compared to 30 years ago, so silver lining is we're going in the right direction.
Well, we better be. I mean, that we got no choice. This
Yeah,
is we're all patients at the end of the day, and
yeah,
you and I included. Like we need it for ourselves, if for no one else.
yeah. Do you have you ever participated in a trial?
Yeah, yeah. I have with when I got COVID, I was in Dr. Hazen's, actually in Ventura, in Dr. Hazen's Ventura clinical trials COVID study,
Nice.
um, using well, uh, it was a microbiome analysis,
Right.
like before I took treatment and then after. And the treatment was azithromycin and CoQ10 and zinc. And I kid you not, man. She called in that prescription. I went to the pharmacy. I gave my stool sample before I took the meds, sent it to her, took the meds. Within hours, started feeling better. And that was my outcome. And then she analyzed the bifidobacteria because that's what she was studying. It was a pretty cool study, but yes, I have been.
Nice.
Um, and I've been in enough of the control group ones too that Apple does on the phone. But
Right.
when I actually got sick, I did do it, and
She's
had a good
she's
experience.
a great doctor. She's local to us here too.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
you're out there, right? You're in Ventura.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
and I do know that study. So that's really cool. That's really cool. I would say to you, I would challenge you, Dan, to participate in a trial a year, um, to just
You can do it.
keep yourself as the patient, right?
I'd probably be excluded from a lot of them because I do a lot of off-label stuff, like a metformin for unless I don't report it.
Right. You could be one of those like patients that's funny.
Yeah,
Uh,
and they won't find my records because I get the meds from Mexico. But
all
um,
right. No, hey, this is not live, so
oh, but I'm in Yuma, and guess what? There is none other than the ones I own. So I'd have to do it in Phoenix or San Diego. And then
okay.
we get into the transportation stuff. But
Right,
yeah,
right,
I can consider some DCT. This is where DCT comes back into play, like some remote study, remote elements.
right.
Yeah, I would do it for sure.
Nice. Well, I think that the DC. What are your? I don't want to poke the bear too much on this.
Mm.
Um,
I don't care that much about it, like some of my colleagues, but I think it's ridiculous. Like that the center of attention is around this arbitrary thing that no one can articulate well. And at the end of the day, we still don't have underrepresented patients in studies. And I mean, we throw all this money at it, and only a few people are actually benefiting from it. And newsflash, it's not the patients.
right.
Uh, so I think during the gold mine, Levi Strauss got rich selling jeans.
Yeah.
Uh, I think that's the people selling the tools are the ones getting rich.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I just read this actually. The amount of money has gone into diver- using DCT as an effort to diversify, and the output of it is significant. ROI, if you will, from like dollars in, diversity out.
Yeah.
It is significantly lower than traditional dollar in and diversity out, but
Mhm.
like significantly. And I just found that it's super interesting that DCT is not what it's.
No, if you're providing a better shovel, in theory, let's use the gold miner analogy. If you say you have a better shovel, but the ones we currently have are good enough, but you have a better one and you've convinced all the sponsors to buy it, but they don't actually work better. They actually are worse.
Right.
And now we've spent our money on these tools that on paper we thought we needed, but I mean, it's debatable whether they actually work in the field. We could have put that money to better use, in my opinion, on things that would actually help the workers, which were never counseled on what they needed. So it's just think tanks that came up with this idea and not the actual coordinators running the show. And
So I have a point that I would love to use you and your platform to see what you think. This is something that I don't know as an industry why don't we talk more about. The DCT is talked about 100 times. We can go down this rabbit hole, and I totally agree with you. It has a space. I don't think that it. I think there will be studies like fully DCT, 10% of trials. That's where I think
I'm all
15%.
for it, man. If it actually works.
Um, but let me ask you, what do you think about this fair market value concept?
Nonsense. Nonsense.
That is
Complete
where we're
nonsense.
not talking about enough. How is it that you can pay a patient recruitment company, and I'm just using just general numbers. Let's use $10,000. You're paying a patient recruitment company $10,000 to put a patient into a site, and you're paying that site, if they're paying 10 over there, maybe $12,000 to
Yeah.
do a 2 year long study, liability, and there's retention and everything that comes along with that visit. Let's call it 24 visits long. So an average about $500 per visit. Let's again using just general math. And when you're asking as a site, hey, you're paying that company 10K to put a patient into my trial. What if you pay me 10K to put my patient into my trial? I'll recruit through other avenues. You can't because of fair market value.
Mm-hmm.
That is like the. What are your thoughts about that? Do you think
My
that's going to
thoughts
go
are
away?
show me the actual regulations where it applies to research because I have yet to see it.
Yes. So I've
It's
hired.
just
Yeah.
sponsors using the law and using big words to scare you, like putting a roadblock in your negotiation because it doesn't actually apply to privatized research. I don't know anything about grants. You know, that was your dad and them doing that stuff and other people doing grants and getting NIH funded, like publicly funded
Oh, that's
AMC.
a little different. Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
I
we're not
agree with you.
talking about that. And we're not talking about Medicare and what Medicare is going to consider fair market value for paying reimbursement for physicians for doing treatment.
Right.
And then sometimes in the oncology, the lines overlap. But in every single study I've ever worked on, that's never been the case. Yet fair market value comes up every time in the budget negotiations.
Now let me pick one thing more. I've recently had, and maybe a bluff, maybe it's just like they're saying what I want to hear, but I've had a lot of sponsors recently say, Nick, I would rather pay you guys. I want to. I am not allowed to because of this fair market value concept, but they're the demeanor or not I don't know if the word the demeanor is the right word, but at least on the call, it comes off as they really want to do it. They just can't. And I've asked lawyers as well, like, where is the regulation? I
They
cannot see
probably
it.
have it internally somewhere, but it's some arbitrary thing they came up with,
Yeah.
and it's their own metrics they have to hit for their boards.
But like,
It's like so to them it's law,
right,
right?
it's
And they
lawful
just use the
internal.
FMV. Yeah, they blame it on the law, but which is a technicality, but they're using it for their internal purposes because they have to please some board.
But they are paying. So here's the catch, though. It's they are if they weren't paying that amount, if they weren't paying it, then it would make sense. But they say, okay, sorry, I can't pay you, but that dude that's across the street, I'm about to pay him. I'm going to do it. Like the money is going to leave my bank account. It's just not going to go to you, where you have the experience, Dan, on community outreach, on doctors in your local area, and all of that effort. And you know how to like advertise locally in your social media and your radios and what works, what doesn't work. But I'm not going to lean on you. I'm going to lean on this global um,
Mm-hmm.
recruitment company that doesn't know anything that's happening in Yuma, but their
Yeah,
strategy of Facebook and Instagram is going to work. And maybe it does. Don't get me wrong, it does because they do send the good leads. I'm not denying it. They have a lot of value,
yeah.
but that to me is something that's it's
It's
my
the good
next
old boys
year's
club. Maybe the good old boys club. Like, hey, we need to justify. What did they tell you? Like, they taught me my first year in research. If you can justify it, you can probably do it. So they justify it. Hey, my buddy is on this board at this central recruitment company. We got to allocate X amount for them. So we got to come up with an internal policy to take away from these sites in order to make that budget for them. And we're just going to follow this policy. Like helping, scratch my back, scratch yours type of thing. And there's a role for me at that company when I leave here. There's probably a advisory role.
You think?
I'm convinced. I don't like not maybe not in every particular case, but this concept of like the mechanism of action, yes,
I
they
don't
work.
know.
This is
Maybe
how it works.
call me altruistic. Call me naive. Uh, Maybe I'm a little
Sorry, man.
naive, but the
Yeah,
reason why I don't is, there is just so many pharmaceuticals out there.
yeah,
Right?
but who makes up those? Like those are just human beings that jump around company to company, and they make decisions at one place and then leave to go somewhere else later.
But like,
Same
don't
with
you have like
regulatory.
I have friends of mine that are running 20% pharmaceutical. They have one molecule. They're in phase two. They're all in, and um, and they too are limited by because they heard it from the grapevine, and they can't do it. They just can't because
Right.
it's and the FDA's never said it. Or
You ever hear this nonsense from like a small biotech?
I have I
I
I, I
usually hear from the big pharma.
I have never heard. I've never been able to get approved, at least not yet. Um, I've never been approved a recruitment fee that is even resembles even 50% of what they pay a patient recruitment company.
Oh,
And
of
that is
course,
from the
of course.
pharmaceutical that is a tiny 10-person pharmaceutical
Yeah.
up till Pfizer. And to me, it just doesn't make sense.
It's because the Sunshine. I mean, there's probably a lot of reasons to it. One of them is the Sunshine Act. I don't know if it's still around, but there's a website where, so like if you're a PI and let's say you're PI for FOMAT, right? Whatever gross revenue FOMAT made
Yeah,
gross shows up on the Sunshine Act website as the PI earned income,
right.
even if it's not, right? So there's probably an element of that there where they're trying to control like public scrutiny to some extent, but there's a lot of the buddy system, regulatory
But do you think
capture.
that small pharmaceutical, that 10-20 person company cares about the sunshine? Like what? Because that company in 2 years is going to be sold by another. It's no longer going to even exist.
Right, right.
They're just trying to get to the finish line,
Yeah.
and they again. I think there's something to be done here, and I think this is a Dan and Brad play here,
Oh man, maybe Dr. Fox and
and Dr. Fox. Yeah,
Chris. Speaking of which, I gotta jump on their
yes.
SOS call right now because there's only 2 days left to buy tickets and we're 20 minutes over. But this was a lot of fun, Nick. We gotta do this
Yeah,
again because we're just scratching the
dude.
surface of, and we didn't even really get into your career. I want to do like a pre-recorded one of that.
Yeah,
But
let's do it.
thank you so much, Nick. If you're listening or watching on YouTube later, Nick's LinkedIn is underneath this video, and real appreciate it, man. You'll be a regular guest, hopefully.
Thank you, Dan. I appreciate it. I appreciate your time today again, and absolutely, whenever love to.
We're just getting started, man. This is gonna be good
I want to
conversation.
get it spicy. I want to get it to some like spice in there.
There's plenty.
Yeah, there is. All right. Well, Merry Christmas to you and to your audience.
Merry
And
Christmas,
Happy New
Happy
Year.
New Year, everybody. Thank you so much, Nick. Everybody go follow him right now. Bye bye.